The most anticipated earnings releases for the week of April 22, 2024. Presented by earningswhispers. We have over 550 companies that have confirmed their earnings release for this week, with Thursday being the busiest day, with more than 200 companies reporting. More importantly, though, half of the market cap for the week is reporting on Thursday. Speaking of market cap, while earnings season got underway last week, the next 2 weeks are when most of the large cap names report results before slowing early in May. Don't worry, the small caps will take over from there, but the next 2 weeks will likely set the tone for the rest of the quarter. New York Community Bancorp is not on the list of companies scheduled to report. For at least the past decade, the company has reported earnings by the end of April and has scheduled the date at least 2 weeks in advance. However, now that we cross the first anniversary of the community bank crisis, New York Community Bank still hasn't scheduled earnings. On Monday, we will start things off with Verizon. The story has changed significantly for the stock since the company reported earnings in October. But while the fundamentals just slowly tick along, sentiment has improved tremendously, but it remains bearish going into earnings. Of course, just about everything rallied off the October lows, including Cliffs, but sentiment in the stock is little changed during that period. That's surprising since the basic materials stocks have been among the leaders during the quarter, and Cliffs has been a leader among the leaders. While the biggest names report on Thursday, Tesla is the company with the most interest ahead of earnings among investors and traders. We already know that deliveries were weak, and we have a pretty good idea that margins will take a hit. So, with expectations low, the focus turns to what is ahead for the company. Around the same time, we'll get results from Visa, which has seen its stock move in the opposite direction. However, despite coming off a low in October, investor sentiment in the name is just as bearish as it is for Tesla. Shares of Visa have performed quite well over the past 20 years, and if you had bought the stock at any time, you would have made money 72% of the time if you held it for 3 months. When sentiment for the stock was this bearish in the past, it was higher 3 months later 83% of the time. That doesn't tell us how the stock will react to earnings, but it favors buying weakness after the news. Things really start to pick up on Wednesday, and Meta tops the list of investors' focus. The company gapped higher on heavy volume last quarter and has performed well since, at least until Friday when the stock showed signs of breaking down for a potential gap fill. If you zoom out on the chart for Ford, you'll see that most of the volume over the past 5 years has been at that $12 level. That's what we see on this chart too, so the trade after earnings is likely in the direction away from this level. We know that there are headwinds for the industry, and there have been some weak data points. Mostly this is due to EVs. We'll know most of what we need to know about EVs when Tesla reports, so the questions we'll want to be answered are about just how well ICE is holding up. Ultimately, when we get through this week, we will want to know where we stand with AI, and we'll get most of those answers after the close on Thursday from Microsoft and Alphabet. We have a pretty good idea that neither company is going to slow their AI spending, so while it isn't quite as simple as this, we need to know how the companies are monetizing AI relative to the amount they are spending. Interestingly, short interest in both names is at or near their highest for the year, even as the stocks reach new highs. It will be a rather busy Friday morning, too, with nearly 40 companies scheduled to report, but it is really all about big oil with Exxon Mobil and Chevron. The story is likely all about the short selling in both names. Since the stocks have moved higher in 2024, short sellers have been pressing their bets to record levels. Some have covered more recently, but all of these short sellers have losses in their positions and they need the stocks to drop or risk slowly getting squeezed out of their positions. With more than 550 companies reporting, there are sure to be some big movers this week. It might be a surprise that names like Tesla, with a likely 10% move on earnings, aren't on this list, but there are a number of important stories getting priced in. One in particular is MarineMax, which has averaged an 8.5% move on earnings over the past several quarters. Those haven't exactly been strong earnings either, but in October, the stock retested its lows after earnings but then rallied with the overall market. Last quarter, the company reported rather weak results, and the stock retested the same level once again. Now, going into earnings, the stock has fallen below this key level but recovered swiftly against a weak overall market on Friday. Trends aren't really expected to be strong anytime soon, and that puts the edge to the downside in the long run. But for now, the question is whether dealer inventory levels are to the point where the company can sell boats next quarter, which is the most important quarter of the year for the company. Either way, traders expect the stock to see an outsized move from this level. Looking out over the next month, we see the end of earnings season around the middle of May, but perhaps the most important name will report a week later, with Nvidia scheduled after the close on Wednesday, May 22nd.
Shh.